There is a creature that refuses to grow up, not metaphorically, biologically. It is born and then simply stops. No final transformation, no transition into adulthood. It remains forever in a state that should only be temporary. This is the axolotl, a salamander that never becomes a salamander. Because normally creatures like this are meant to change, to leave the water, to become something else. But the axolotl doesn't. It stays exactly as it is. This condition is called neoteny, where a creature becomes capable of reproduction without ever becoming an adult. But that's not the strangest part. Because the axolotl doesn't just refuse to grow, it refuses to break. Lose a limb, it grows back. Damage its heart, it heals. Even parts of its brain regenerate perfectly. No scars, no trace of damage, as if nothing ever happened. In most creatures, damage is permanent, but in the axolotl, nothing stays broken. Which raises a question. If a creature never truly changes and nothing leaves a mark, then what does its life actually become? In the silent waters where it lives, the axolotl doesn't move forward. It simply remains. Most amphibians follow a familiar path. They begin as aquatic larvae, living in water, breathing through gills. Then, at a precise moment, everything changes. Hormones surge, tissues reorganize, organs transform, gills disappear, lungs take over, and the animal leaves the water. This process, metamorphosis, is not optional. It is a rule. And yet, the axolotl ignores it. It stays in water, keeps its larval body, and still becomes fully reproductive. This phenomenon is called neoteny. But here's the unsettling part. In the axolotl, it's permanent. Inside its body, the system for transformation still exists. The thyroid gland, the same one that drives metamorphosis in other amphibians, is present, functional, intact. The signal is there, but the body doesn't respond the way it should. One leading explanation suggests a low sensitivity to thyroid hormones. The trigger exists, but it's weak, as if the command to change is only whispered. And so the transformation never completes, not naturally. Under controlled conditions, scientists have forced the process. By introducing external thyroid hormones, the axolotl can be made to transform. Its gills retract, its skin thickens, its body shifts toward life on land. For a moment, it becomes what it was always meant to be. But the result doesn't last. The transformed axolotl often lives a shorter life. Its health declines. Its behavior changes. It survives, but not as well. Which creates a strange possibility that the form we call incomplete is actually the most efficient one. To understand why, you have to leave the lab and return to where it evolved. Once the axolotl lived in the high-altitude lakes of central Mexico. Cold, still, rich in nutrients, but with fewer predators. In this environment, there was no pressure to leave the water. Because metamorphosis comes at a cost. It requires energy. It introduces risk. Life on land is harsher, drier, more unpredictable, more dangerous. But in a stable aquatic world, those risks offer no reward. So evolution shifts the question, not how to change, but what if you never had to? Over generations, the answer becomes encoded. Stay in water, reproduce early, avoid unnecessary transformation. What was once temporary becomes permanent. Not because evolution failed, but because it found a shortcut, a way to skip an expensive step entirely. But that's only part of the story. Because in most animals, damage leaves a mark. Scars, loss, permanent change. But in the axolotl, injury is not an end. It's a beginning. A limb can be completely severed. Bone, muscle, nerves, gone. And within weeks, it returns, perfectly formed. Not a rough replacement, a complete reconstruction. Even complex organs follow the same rule. Parts of the heart, the spinal cord, even sections of the brain, destroyed and rebuilt, as if nothing ever happened. And that's where it becomes unsettling, because the axolotl doesn't just refuse to grow up, it refuses to stay damaged. This is not simple healing, it is regeneration. And in the axolotl, it works at a level most vertebrates lost long ago. At the site of injury, something unusual happens. Instead of forming a scar, the cells begin to forget. Muscle cells forget they were muscle. Skin cells abandon their structure. They reverse back into a more primitive state, flexible, undifferentiated. From this mass, called a blastema, something new begins to form. A limb, tissue, structure, rebuilt from scratch. Not roughly, not approximately, but perfectly. In most organisms, this kind of growth is dangerous. Uncontrolled cells lead to tumors, errors, deformities. But in the axolotl, it stays controlled. Growth stops exactly where it should. Patterns return exactly as they were, as if the body remembers what it used to be and knows how to rebuild it from almost nothing. And yet, this ability comes with a cost, a hidden trade-off. Because a body that can constantly regenerate is also a body that resists finality. Its cells remain flexible, less fixed, less committed. And that flexibility may be connected to something deeper. Not just healing, but its refusal to fully mature. The same system that allows regeneration may also prevent transformation. A body that never fully specializes, never locks into a final form, never completes the process. It stays open, adaptive, but unfinished. And that raises a difficult question. Is the axolotl incomplete? Or is it following a completely different set of rules? Because in most life forms, growth follows a direction, a beginning, a progression, an end. But the axolotl resists that path. It remains open, adaptable, unfinished. And in doing so, it achieves something paradoxical. It becomes both stable and constantly changing. A creature that does not evolve forward, yet can rebuild itself endlessly. But this balance is fragile, because the world that made this possible is disappearing. The ancient lakes it once lived in are no longer the same. They've been reduced, broken apart, changed. Pollution spreads, cities expand, new species invade. The stability that once removed the need to change is fading. And with it, the conditions that allowed this creature to exist. Which leaves one final question. What happens to a life form that survives by never changing when the world around it does. There is a point in every system where stability becomes a weakness. For the axolotl, that point is no longer theoretical. It's already happening. The waters of Lake Xochimilco are no longer what they once were. What remains is a fragmented network of canals, a broken version of a once vast ecosystem. The cold, clear waters that shaped its evolution have changed. Warmer temperatures, lower oxygen, pollution, and invasive species. Each change adds pressure, not enough to destroy it instantly, but enough to slowly break the balance it depends on. Because in a stable world, refusing to change is an advantage. But in an unstable one, it becomes a weakness. The axolotl doesn't adapt quickly. It doesn't shift environments. It doesn't accelerate its life cycle. It continues unchanged, even as the world around it collapses. And yet, in captivity, it thrives. In laboratories, in aquariums, under human control, it doesn't just survive, it multiplies. Which creates a contradiction. In the wild, it disappears. In captivity, it grows. And this is where the story changes. Because the axolotl is no longer just an animal. It's a system, studied not for what it is, but for what it can do. Its ability to regenerate is not just rare, it's valuable. Because in humans, damage is permanent. A lost limb does not return. A spinal injury does not heal. Brain tissue does not rebuild. The body chooses closure over restoration, speed over perfection. But the axolotl does something different. It rebuilds. The axolotl chooses differently. It delays closure, reopens developmental pathways, rebuilds instead of repairing. And it does this without losing control. No tumors, no structural errors, just precision. This is not a small difference. It suggests that long ago, other vertebrates may have had this ability too, and lost it. One theory suggests as life became more complex, the risk of uncontrolled growth increased. Cancer became a threat. So the system changed. Cells became more specialized, more rigid, less capable of reversing. Regeneration was traded for stability. But the axolotl never made that trade. Or maybe it never had to, because its environment never demanded it. But now, that environment is gone. Polluted water disrupts its biology. Invasive species prey on its young. Fragmented habitats isolate its population. Each problem alone, manageable. Together, they apply constant pressure. And the axolotl doesn't change. It can't suddenly adapt. It can't evolve fast enough. It doesn't develop new defenses. Its entire strategies based on one idea remain the same. Which leads to an unavoidable question. What happens to a creature that survives by avoiding change when the world around it demands it? There are signs, subtle but significant, that the answer is already emerging. In rare cases, axolotls have been seen attempting to transform. Not fully, not successfully, but enough to show something is changing. Their gills shrink, their skin thickens, their behavior shifts. But the process doesn't complete. It fails, and often it kills them. This is not adaptation, it is breakdown. A system pushed beyond the conditions it was built for. And that's where the axolotl becomes something more. Not just a creature, but a pattern. Because life doesn't always evolve by becoming more complex. Sometimes it simplifies, removes steps, finds stability in staying unfinished. But that strategy only works in a predictable world. And when that predictability disappears, those same traits begin to fail. And yet, the axolotl doesn't vanish, not completely. Because while it disappears in the wild, it thrives in captivity, in labs, in aquariums, under human control. There are now more axolotls in tanks than in nature. They are preserved, maintained, carefully managed. Which leads to an uncomfortable truth. The axolotl may survive, but not as a wild species. What remains is something sustained from the outside, and in that shift, something changes. Because the axolotl was never just about regeneration or refusing to grow up. It was about balance. A perfect alignment between organism and environment. A system so stable that evolution didn't need to move forward. But once that balance breaks, the system collapses. So the question is no longer why the axolotl defies the rules of life. It only did so because its world allowed it. But now, that world is gone. And the axolotl doesn't change. It remains what it has always been. Unfinished, unadapted, suspended in time. A creature that never completed its transformation, now trapped in a world that demands it. Because in the end, evolution doesn't create perfect life. It creates life that fits its moment. And the axolotl was built for a moment that no longer exists. Because even a creature that can rebuild its own body cannot rebuild the world it depends on.